and we spent the afternoon driving around town, and he was pointing out all of the myriad of narco restaurants and other businesses that the narcos have purchased and run in order to launder or wash the money. It was impossible to compete with these narco businesses because he still had to compete with them on a price level in order to get the clientele. But he found that while he could keep his restaurant full, he wasn't making any money at the end of the day because, you know, he can't operate at a loss or at zero profit like his competition was. Hey folks, so I spent the afternoon out with my Airbnb host, and I didn't want to put anything on video just because of some of the nature of the things that we were doing, but we wound up seeing quite a bit of the city, and I got a lot of background on kind of what's happening in town, especially economically and with the cartels, and a new view of one of the aspects of how the cartels affect the communities that they are in economically. So my Airbnb hosts were restaurant owners, had a couple of restaurants, and they wound up having to close them in part because they weren't able to go up against the narco restaurants that they were competing with. So in order to launder the money that they make running drugs and migrants, the cartels are forced to purchase businesses that they will run at a loss or a minimal profit, but they're popular businesses largely because they can afford to buy them in nice places and keep prices low and make sure that service is good in order to make sure that they stay very full. And then they can start feeding profits that they're making from their illicit activities into the legitimate businesses. So my host is a former restaurateur here in Mexicali, and we spent the afternoon driving around town, and he was pointing out all of the myriad of narco restaurants and other businesses that the narcos have purchased and run in order to launder or wash the money that are coming in. We ate at a couple of the restaurants. The service was great and the food was good. The prices were low, and from what he was saying, and I'm wanting to keep him at least stay discreet, make sure that he stays unidentifiable. But one of the things that he was saying was that it was impossible to compete with these narco businesses because he still had to compete with them on a price level in order to get the clientele. But he found that while he could keep his restaurant full, he wasn't making any money at the end of the day because, you know, he can't operate at a loss or at zero profit like his competition was. He had to close one of his restaurants because of that, and then another restaurant that was not profitable, he actually had a narco businessman move into the same mini mall essentially and set up a business, a restaurant that wasn't a direct competitor of his. And I won't say what type of business he was in, but it was in the restaurant industry. But the narco businessman approached him and said, "Hey, I want you to go out of business because I want to start a restaurant like the one that you're running in the location that you're running it. So I'll give you the option. You can either come and work for my business that I'm going to start that's doing what you're doing currently, or you can just get out of business. Now, my friend was telling me that he had just finished investing on the order of $100,000 into this business, and ultimately he had to walk away from it. It wasn't something that he was making a lot of money on anyway, even with the substantial amount of investment. And he showed me pictures of just a beautiful facility full of people, showed me the food. It looked amazing, but it wasn't competitive with what he was going up against because of the ability for the narcos to undercut him on price. So ultimately he decided to go out of business, just to fold it up. He still operates in the restaurant space, but as a made-to-order type of business. It was very interesting. We wound up driving around town. We saw some neighborhoods that are where most of the mid-level and higher cartel members who live in Mexicali, they have their homes, and they're opulent. They're obviously doing well, and they're living alongside, the best and brightest of Mexicali society, surgeons, lawyers, judges, and strange, gated communities that they live in, because of course they want their kids to be able to run around and play and be safe. At the same time, they're pursuing a line of work that makes the rest of the community obviously substantially less safe. The outcome of all of this just seems extremely unfair. To watch these legitimate business people struggling because of the advantages that the narcos come in with. And it was interesting because he was telling me some of the clues as to whether a restaurant or a business is run by narcos. Oftentimes it'll be too low of price for the quality. The buildings are often very new. The staff is very attentive because they don't know, if the clientele is a friend or a relative of whoever narco. And so the service is usually very top-notch. And very often these will be the most popular restaurants and businesses in town, because it's that level of popularity that allows the narcos to be able to infuse these businesses with extra cash so that they can legitimize the money that they're bringing in illegally through the migrant and drug trade. Fascinating. It's an element of the local economy that, of course, exists across northern Mexico, but getting to see a personal manifestation of this and watch the fallout on legitimate business people trying to run an honest business is penetrating and unfair. It destroys dreams. It keeps people from being able to pursue legitimate business with legitimate talent and goals. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad that they're up against something that they don't have a choice but to go along with. The violence that might have gotten leveled at my friend meant that he had no choice but to fold up the business rather than go into competition with this narco-businessman that wanted to take him over. I'm interested to look into more of this. cartel situation here in Mexicali is, and I've confirmed this with a couple of different folks, there is a cartel boss named El Ruso. He has several names that he goes by, but his cartel nickname is El Ruso. He had been sent up by one of the factions of the Sinaloa cartel under El Mayo Zambrano to control that faction of the Sinaloa cartel's operations in this part of Baja California, kind of the northeastern part of Baja California. He was initially sent to, it looks like, San Luis de Colorado, where he went up against the other faction of the Sinaloa cartel, the Chapitos, so the sons of El Chapo. And El Mayo was the second in command at the point when El Chapo Guzman was arrested in 2016. It looks like he and the Chapitos, or sons of El Chapo, were operating hand in glove normally from about 2016 to 2019, when one of the Chapitos, Ovidio Guzman, was arrested, and the other brothers wanted all of Sinaloa cartel to cause riot and ruckus and robberies and killings and whatnot, to make sure that Ovidio was released by the police or National Guard, rather than being extradited to the United States. However, El Mayo did not go along with this, and it caused the start of a split in the Sinaloa cartel that only deepened from there as El Mayo got into more and more altercations with the forces that were under the Chapitos. So this has opened into a full-scale civil war, and at some point, it looks like in 2021, from what I'm gathering, I could be wrong on my dates here, but it was in this time period, that El Mayo sent El Ruso north to take over his factions and organization in northwestern Sonora and northeastern Baja California Norte. He started in San Luis de Colorado and appears to have pushed the Chapitos out of town, and then expanded in, it looks like, in 2022 and 2023 into Mexicali. He did not have to fight quite as hard to take this territory over, having already won San Luis de Colorado. He pushed the Tijuana cartel, the Arellano Felix cartel, out of Mexicali, as well as the Chapitos. And now, for the last, it sounds like year, maybe year plus, Mexicali has been quite peaceful. When there is order and control in the cartel world, usually what happens is there's a big spike in the amount of drugs that start to get moved. And so the Mexican military, police, US DEA, US other law enforcement agencies have been pursuing a strategy of what they call decapitation, where they take out the strong men in the cartels in order to cause a lot of fracas in the lower ranks, as people are jockeying for control of the cartel assets now that whoever the strongman is has been taken out. And that's typically, from what I understand, when you see the amount of drugs that are crossing the border drop, because they're busy fighting amongst themselves and not focused so much on moving product across the border. I'm curious to see if this extends to migrants, The migrants are getting moved by the coyotes, and I'm not sure that that is something that would necessarily get entirely interrupted. What I think is happening is the coyotes are doing what they're doing with moving migrants no matter what. If the cartels take them over and force them to pay protection money, or they control them directly, I believe they're probably still moving about the same number of migrants. The X factor here is that the cartels may be moving specific amounts of migrants towards different parts of the border in order to help facilitate the flow of VIP migrants, but also drugs. They'll send maybe some low status, low paying migrants across to get caught and draw the attention of the Customs and Border Patrol personnel while they're moving other sets of migrants or drugs across in different parts of the border now that CBP is occupied in a particular location. There's fewer of them to be watching some of the other areas within the area that they're patrolling. So I'll dig into more of this, of course. I'm leery about getting in too deep with what's happening cartel-wise, but all roads seem to lead back to what's happening with the cartels because they just seem to control so many aspects of what's happening at the border, what's happening with migration, obviously what's happening with drug movement. I have a few other ideas about some of the relationships between the migrants and the drugs and the volumes of each, and the possibility that money that has been coming in from moving migrants has helped bridge the financial gap that it looks like the cartels may have been suffering from with the introduction of large amounts of fentanyl. The price of fentanyl 4 or 5 years ago used to be substantially higher than it is now. Those prices dropped to almost nothing. You could get a blue, which is the blue pill or azul pill that you can get of fentanyl on the street for as little as $1. I know when I have been volunteering in the zone in Phoenix, that's the big homelessness area, I've heard that you could get blues for as little as 65 cents. I'm interested in, I guess something that occurs to me is that the cartels may have been taking the fentanyl precursors from China, making them into the pills and powder, importing them into the US, dropping the price in order to be able to get inner cities, rural counties, Indian reservations addicted to this new drug source. And especially because it's so potent, they don't have to smuggle as much of it over as they might have to with cocaine or heroin or meth. And so because it's more compact, they wanted to get people addicted. The way that you can get people addicted is provide a good high, make it really cheap. If you make it cheap and you get people onto that form of drug, then once they're addicted, now you can start upping the price.